Hi, wonderful humans. This week we continue our talk about the future of food in terms of what are we eating now and how sustainable really is it, and then how are we going to feed our growing world population, specifically when we think of in terms of 2050 and what is to come, with how big our population will be, and knowing that even nowadays many people are not getting the food and nutrients that they need. The first thing that we reviewed or talked about in our Webex meeting was specifics that we talked about or learned last week. So step one for you to make up your missed Webex is that you are going to, in an email, respond in 2 to 3 sentences with this question: what was one specific thing you learned from last week's lessons about our food? Feel free to look back at past assignments, look at the videos, readings, so on and so forth from last week about lessons you learned with food. If you need to pause the video right here to go and type that response, please do so. So just a brain refresher, some of the things that we did talk about last week was we talked about beef consumption and how we in the United States are one of the highest consumers of beef throughout the entire world. We are also one of the highest producers of beef as well. Some of the things we talked about was the negative impacts of producing beef, such as how much land that they take up to produce, as well as other resources such as water. Mr. Anderson used this graph last week to show you that beef, they are going to take up, or cattle are going to take up more water to produce compared to something such as a soy plant, which is another good protein source. We also talked about the impact of beef, and this is with the activity you did last week of analyzing with the map. You read an article that talked about how the United States is one of the largest beef consumers in the world, so we consume about 200 pounds of meat on average every single year. However, you'll notice that I have the 3 most populated countries in the world also start. So the United States is number 3. We have China coming in at number 1, and they eat about half of the beef that we do. And then the second most populated country in the world here is India at 7.2 pounds. And they only eat 7.2 pounds of beef, despite being the second most populated country in the world. Now, there's a few reasons for that. Again, in India, many people do not eat beef in particular. However, they will eat other types of meat because of their religion that they practice, which is Hinduism for many of them. However, there are also other types of food that they are going to use, insects being one of them, as well as other sources of protein such as soy that they will then eat instead. So as we go through and talk about this, recognizing that people are going to eat differently around the world based on how they are raised or grow up, as well as the environment around them. And that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind moving forward, is how does that impact them, their footprint left on the world. In addition to talking about the impact of meat, we've also been talking about analysis, or working through our analysis writing. So for instance, if you were going to be looking at this practice analysis, which we did this morning, it says eating beef harms our environment. We found one piece of evidence here that says producing just 1 hamburger uses enough fossil fuel to drive a small car 20 miles. The first thing we took a look at is to make sure that it does talk about how eating beef harms our environment, and we said that the words fossil fuel here gave good indication that just 1 hamburger is producing a lot of fossil fuels, and we said that was definitely harming our environment then. So the second thing that you would need to do is, after you have found your evidence, is tell me, why does this information matter? You might start off with at first by saying this information matters because, or my evidence proves my claim because, and then you're going to get into your writing piece. So for instance, I might start off by brainstorming or thinking about, how does my evidence prove my claim? Well, again, I could start off by talking about those fossil fuels or the pollution. I could also talk about it harming our environment, and nobody really thinking excuse me, nobody really thinking about how it is going to harm the environment in the first place, right? Like, we had hamburgers at our house this last weekend. I didn't really think about how it was harming the environment, or how it was going to cost me 20 miles in a small car, so on and so forth. I don't think about those things, and I'm guessing many Americans, as they are eating, do not think about those things either. And so that kind of leads me to thinking about, well, if it's really harming our environment this much, wouldn't we want to educate people? Which is what we're trying to do with you. And so after I'm done, I've brainstormed these ideas, maybe I've jotted them down on a scratch piece of paper, I'm going to write my analysis. Okay. Again, you'll know reading through my analysis that it says a lot of people eat meat, particularly beef here in the United States, and probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about how they are impacting the environment. So again, I'm going back to my claim or relating it to my claim, but also taking my ideas one step further by then expanding. I said if people knew the food they ate polluted the environment as much as beef, they would probably think twice before eating. In this instance, people may not go to McDonald's or Culver's as often for hamburgers or cheeseburgers. Moreover, some may try other food alternatives such as insects, which are not as harmful to the environment. So I've explained my reasoning here of how beef harms the environment, and then people's thought process, or the education piece of that. So I've used my brainstormed ideas, I put them into my analysis, and I have gone 4 to 5 sentences explaining it. Remember, with big pieces of our analysis, we want to avoid first or second person. Our goal is to hit 5 well thought out sentences and make sure always that our evidence is proving our analysis is saying why our evidence is proving our claim, not just repeating our evidence and what it says. The second response I would like you to have, and you can put this in the same email as before, is that you are going to come up with an analysis for this particular claim. Now, I will say that in our Webex for today, I did tell students that they could do anywhere from 2 to 4 sentences, and I would be okay with that as long as I could see their thinking throughout. So again, I want full sentences, and you are going to be telling me, based on this claim, eating meat is not sustainable for future generations. And this piece of evidence, the new analysis shows that while meat and dairy provide just 18% of calories and 37% of protein, it uses the vast majority, 83% of our farmland. I want you to tell me, why does this information matter? And if you really need to focus in on something, I would focus in on this portion here that we use a lot of our farmland, 83% for beef. And yet it doesn't really take a lot of our food or our nutrients, or we don't consume a lot of that for our food or nutrients. And so thinking of why is it important that we use so much of that farmland for this purpose? Again, this is your second response. It can be in the same email to me. When you are working this week, and I'll explain directions to your assignment in a second, you are going to be writing an analysis. Again, goal is 5 sentences, so we're going to avoid first or second person. Some things I would keep in mind is telling me either why that information matters or how does my evidence prove this claim. That way that you can start to formulate or brainstorm ideas in your mind, as well as maybe jot some down on that paper. Worst case scenario, you can always go back and watch my CEA video again. I posted it on Google Classroom, and we'll continually move it to the top of our Google Classroom page throughout our online learning adventure. The last thing I'm going to go through today is your assignment. In Google Classroom, you have an assignment that is listed Edible Insects CEA Outline. You have really 2 portions or 2 steps that you are going to be working with. The first one is you are going to be reading 2 separate articles. Both of these articles are going to make the argument that Americans need to make insects a regular part of their diet. From Article 1 and then from Article 2, you are going to find 2 pieces of evidence each. So again, Article 1, 2 pieces of evidence. I'm going to make sure to put in my paragraph number over here on the right. And then for Article 2, same thing, 2 pieces of evidence and my paragraph numbers over here on the right. When I'm all done with those pieces, as well as writing my short summaries, I am all done for day 2. Day 3 then is going to consist of me taking these pieces of evidence, copying, pasting them into my evidence boxes here wherever I see fit with organization, and completing my CEA outline. Again, you're going to want to use this claim: Americans need to make insects a regular part of their diet, and have 3 pieces of evidence that prove why. You are definitely in charge of writing your analysis and making sure you have the strongest analysis ever. With that being said, if you need help from me, feel free to reach out on Webex. We can always one-on-one chat or email. That way that we can double check and make sure that what you are handing in is super awesome, because this is a summative writing grade. Again, this entire activity, but more specifically, this CEA outline is going to be a summative writing grade in the learning target for writing. So if you need help or you want me to check it over, please feel free to do so. We can always schedule a meeting for Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.